WARO, so that's wild animal recovery, and for cultural and for their own management purposes. So there are always exceptions, you're right, and while we say quiet park and we celebrate it, it's not actually always quiet, is it?
Indeed.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned reclassification of land at the Remarkables. How do you see that affecting the Remarkables ski area and its proposed expansion into the Doolan space?
Thank you for asking that. Yeah, it's a really good one. I keep asking Doc, every time we've got an executive meeting coming up, as Forgotten Lands convener, I phone Doc and I say, well, okay, where are we up to on this, that and the other thing? I always ask about that and a couple of other projects because it was started as a separate reclassification project before the nationwide fast track project began. It was nearly there. I thought we would have been there by the end of last year, but Doc has said no, they're going to bring it into the whole nationwide thing. But of course all that work remains having been done. If the nationwide project is dumped, then that project itself may be re-enlivened. I think a huge number of submissions have proposed turning that into a national park, which is what our campaign from 2017 was focused on. And that wasn't based on nothing. That was years worth of research and advocacy, starting with Sir Alan Mark in the 1970s, and along with Forest and Bird also. And I remember Alan Mark saying the closer he looked at the values there, the more he became fixed that it deserved national park status. And I would say that since then, that idea has only cemented itself in my mind, because you look at this place, which is right on the doorstep of a high population, a wealthy high population with tourism focus. And if that were anything less than a national park, I think it would get hammered. And as far as the Doolins goes, yeah, if that were conservation park, I don't think it's well known how vulnerable a conservation park actually is. We know that there are mines and hydros in conservation parks. Most of them are well away from big urban centres, but you go in there and there are already motorbikes and there are four-wheel drives, and imagine that close to a wealthy, population-dense place. And I do think it will be very vulnerable. Conservation Park would allow the ski development to take place, probably the hole in the cliff to take place. National Park wouldn't. Yeah, so National Park is it, as far as I'm concerned. Of course, our proposal back in 2017 went south quite a long way, down through that country, taking in Nokamai and Glenarry Station. Glenarry's tenure review has gone fut, so that's not the end of it. The end of tenure review is not actually the end of the review of tenure of Crown pastoral leases, so that could actually still come out and be attached to the Remarkables in a national park. But yeah, I'm firmly for that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
This paper roads, you're talking about the paper roads becoming used by everyone, which I think is a great idea. But I have personally come across a lot of obstructions in that category, being that there are a lot of people that border the land of which paper roads are on.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Have taken over.
Yeah, they put gates up and sometimes they lock them.
Then there's buildings and
yeah, and you're not allowed to do. You're not strictly allowed to do that. And if, as an adjacent landowner, you've done that, but you still allow people to get through, it's all fine. There's a nice sort of informal approach to unformed legal roads that we as a society take. So we allow the adjacent landowners to use them, sometimes to put up buildings, to run stock there and so on. But they look after it, and as long as they allow the public there, I think that's okay. Nobody needs to fork out for fencing or for signage or road advisories or anything like that. So it sits well. It's only when you get those people who really challenge it as adjacent landowners who perhaps don't know the rules, or maybe are just pushing it a wee bit hard. But look, if you do run into any such situation like that, get in touch with your council, because the councils are the administering authorities. Perhaps look it up on the Outdoor Access website first, so you know where you stand. Sometimes your council officers aren't so in the know as you might be, and just push it to them. It is for them to take the law into their hands as they see fit, or to pass it on to the police or whatever other is the correct authority.
I have had responses from council engineers who simply say, oh, the land is being used now, you can't use the road.
No, that's not the case. The title of the campaign was designed so that people would focus on that idea that these roads are actually the same as State Highway 1 in their legal status. So they're 20 metres wide and all members of the public have got the right to go there. And just as you are able on State Highway 1, you're allowed to have an accident, you're allowed to run your stop within reason, all of those things, you're allowed to do those things on an unformed legal road. Yeah, but you're not allowed to lock it. Yeah. Are there any other questions? I think we might just have one or two more and then we'll wrap it up. Would that be about right?
Yep, yeah, okay.
Yeah, cool. All right. Any more? There was somebody over yonder.
I can ask one.
Oh, yeah.
Just going back to like Moana.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it a few years ago and it was amazing. It was fantastic. We stayed in all the huts, took the kids. What do you think is going to happen to that area?
This is crystal ball gazing, but look, it is proposed that they set up there, this is Tuhoe, set up a small number of villages that presumably one would be able to tramp to. As I understand it, it wouldn't be much of a network. The tracks, I really don't know if the tracks are going to survive. And they did in an earlier TUT meeting this year say that the bridges would come out too. That will be problematic if they do and if they're not replaced. But this is one thing they have said they will do, is to set up this, this small number of villages which you would be able to stay in. And of course there is tenting. So yeah, there is that. And the Act provides for recreation and public access. And it is very unclear as to how much of either, and that could be problematic. It's something to be worked through, I should say. You may remember it was closed in August last year, and that closure remained until, I think, January this year. It was never challenged. So there is that lack of clarity in the law. How much public access and recreation does the law actually allow for? These are all things to be answered in the future. Yeah, any more questions? Just one more? Yeah.
I'm going to hear around stewardship land. Is that fundamentally land that has been deemed to be potentially important or significant, but it hasn't been pigeonholed yet into going and saying, okay, we've actually looked at this land, we need to make that conservation statement? Yes,
you're absolutely right. Yeah, and the legal status is in the late 80s, when DOC was being formed and the Conservation Act was being written, they were looking at all of this unallocated Crown land. And there was quite a lot, clearly with very high public conservation values, like the big Cook Haast area and the Whataroa, the Wanganui-Atera catchments area. And they were given to DOC to look after, but because they didn't have that status like National Park or Scenic Reserve, they were put into this stewardship pot with the intent of assessing it, deciding all of its values, all its biological and landscape and recreational values and so on, and allocating it a more specific classification down the track. But for most of that land, it never happened.
So that means that people could go and say, I want to put a mine through there, or a road through there, or a gondola through there, or
yeah, exactly. And it's been seen that way. And I think that DOC has seen it that way, and many governments have done. And certainly business developers have done as well. But I would argue, actually, just on the basis of more recent case law, that actually there's a strong case. And this is largely based on Forest and Birds work at Ruataniwha up in Hawke's Bay. It's a very strong case to be made that this land should be treated with kid gloves as if it were essentially national park until assessment proves otherwise. And I reckon if you gave that to a Gary Judd or a Jack Hodder or a Stephen Franks to take to the court and argue eloquently, I think they'd have a real go. Yeah. Next steps, eh? Yeah. All right. Hey, look, I will leave it there. Happy times in the hills, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to your birthday party. I really do appreciate it. Have a lovely night and a great day tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Jan, for coming along and telling us about the FMC and the future and making sure that we've still got access to the outdoors. Okay, look, we've got coffee and tea up there and cake. Now, if you still see the last few bits of cake there, don't take them. They belong to Jim and Nairi. So, look, if you could grab your coffee or tea and a bit of cake and come back to your seats. We're going to have to do another photo things. So, socialise there at your tables. A bit more talking to happen. And the other interesting thing with the reunion, that we've just found out we actually do have another life member, Judy McGeorge, over the back there. Welcome along, and welcome to the club again. So, we took a photo of the life members. Well, we're now going to take another photo again, adding a new life member tonight. So, right, so it's coffee and tea time and cake, and back to the seats, and then we can carry on. We are running a bit late, so please don't leave yet. So enjoy that. So go for it, please. Oh, the other things too, over there, help yourself to the FMC magazines. There's badges and a pin and all that sort of thing, the book. So go for it. The book's $20. Leave it in the honesty box, but help yourself to some old badges. Not a problem.